Hi everyone, my name is Preeti Wadekar from the Red Pen, and I would like to welcome all of you to this webinar, which is going to be conducted by Manan from Enzo Prep and on winning, GMAT strategies. We are going to give a couple of minutes for attendees to kind of trickle in before we get started. Till we get started, would people who are joining in, would you like to share where are you joining in from, India or anywhere else? If you're joining from India, which city are you joining? And do post your questions in the Q&A box as and when you have questions, and I will take all the questions with Manan at the end. Okay, I just understand that participants can't respond, so I don't know where everyone is joining from, but that's totally fine. If you all have questions, the Q&A box is still open, and I think keep posting your questions as and when you have them, and we'll take all the questions at the end. All right, so we are going to get started. Okay. I see that there are questions already trickling in, but we're going to get started. All right. All right. So let me just present my screen. All right. Just a second. All right. All right, so welcome everyone to this amazing webinar about strategies to break the 750 coveted 750 barrier on the GMAT. I see that questions have already started coming, and I'm very excited for this. And I'm going to, introduce the Red Pen, and then I'm going to introduce Manan, and then hand over the stage to him. And if you have any questions, keep posting them in the Q&A box, and we'll take them at the end. Okay. All right, so about the Red Pen, Red Pen has been in higher education consulting, industry for about 10 or 11 odd years now. And we work across undergraduate, early advising, boarding schools, postgraduate programs, as well as MBA admissions. This is all admissions consulting. And, about the MBA admissions consulting specifically, 95% of our applicants have received offers to their top choice programs whenever they have worked with us for at least 5 schools. About last cycle alone, we saw close to $1.5 million in scholarships. That number has actually changed since we put these slides together. So I'm very happy to share that. 100% applicants have received interview invites from at least one program. Right, we do support applicants on schools that they apply independently, irrespective of whether that's a part of what they sign up with us or not. And 98% of applicants apply to top global 25 programs. These were our results from the 2020, 2021 cycle. And if you see the results are pretty much, the same, in the 2020, 22 cycle as well. We're looking at top 25 programs across US and Europe. So in today's conversation, I think we have Manan, who's the founder and CEO of Enzo Prep. To introduce Manan, he is a highly rated and a very sought after GMAT and GRE trainer in India. But he has worked with, over 9,500 students across 25 countries. When he took the GMAT first time himself, he did share that he, on the first attempt itself, he scored a 760. And he said, this is something I can, share with many students. And he has been doing that for a number of years now. He's the only GMAT trainer in Asia to have helped students achieve the elusive perfect verbal score. One student, in fact, scored about 800 on 800. His former students have been admitted to all top business schools, Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, Kellogg, Fuqua, Yale, Stern. Locally, there's also ISB, IIM, all the ABC, IIMs. There's in INSEAD, MIT, Columbia, so all these top schools, right? He and he has an unmatched record of producing 740 plus scores. So I will, before I hand over the stage to Manan, I do want to share that it has been very challenging for Manan to cram all the amazing information that he has in just about 30 minutes, before we take on questions. So probably this may go on to about 40 minutes or so, 40, 45 minutes maybe. But I do want to share that, he does demo sessions which are way longer and which will cover all the topics of GMAT in greater depth. So I do encourage you all to kind of reach out to him directly after this webinar. If you all need more details on very specific topics on quant and sentence correction and reading comprehension and all of that. Yeah, so I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to hand over the podium to Manan.
Great. I hope everyone can hear me loud and clear. So thank you so much, PT, for the wonderful introduction. So I'm just going to cut to the chase because we don't have too much of time together, but I just want to let you know a couple of things about myself. So one, I am fanatical about two things. One is speed and the other one is learning. And my idol has been Enzo. So Ferrari Enzo, for those of you who've been motorsports enthusiasts, you would know about it. That's where the name Enzo Prep comes from. And what I have tried to do in the last 9+ years is that I've basically tried to devise a framework, a step-by-step approach, if you will, that can allow you to get to a score of a 740 plus in just about 2 to 3 months. It's not going to take too long. People have very wrong notions about how long it takes to get a high score. We'll try to bust those myths today in the session. But I'm very excited to share this one acronym that I believe truly encapsulates every single thing that you need to know about to be able to get to a 740 plus, right? A lot of people do talk about tips, tricks, smarts, hacks, techniques, but I think that's very shallow. I think there is something that's much more deeper. There's something much more important when it comes to getting a high score that almost everyone ends up missing out on, right? So I'm going to talk about certain tips, tricks, strategies for sure, but this discussion is going to be much, much richer. So let's just quickly get on with the acronym. So no prizes for guessing who came up with this. So I've named this acronym race car, and these are certain traits, if you will, that allow you to be able to get to that high score of a 740 plus. Without them, no matter how hard you practice, no matter how many questions you do, no matter how many resources you utilize, you will find yourself hitting a plateau or a ceiling, and it'll be almost virtually impossible to break through that ceiling except without taking into account these things. So let's get started. The first and foremost thing, and by the way, these are patterns, the common ingredients that I have found in all 740 plus scorers, in my system at least, right? So every single person that I've tutored, all of these things that I've talked that are there on this particular slide, you'll find them to be common in all of those people. And first and foremost is the right mindset, right? It doesn't really matter where you're coming from. It doesn't matter what your background is, what your experience is, how much did you score in 10th and 12th and your graduation. All of those things pale in comparison to one like overarching trait which all of these people have, and that is the right mindset. And when I say right mindset, I actually mean that, it's not enough to say I did my best. That's where a lot of people stop and say, you know what, I've done my best. This is the best I could get. I think I'm going to settle with this. But I truly believe that there is a level that is way beyond that, which is I'm going to do whatever it takes to get to a score of a 740 plus. Every single interaction that I've had with people, even before they joined in, I could understand that this guy is slated to get to a 740 plus. I did not know anything about that person, but I still could figure that that guy is going to be able to get to that score primarily because of the mindset, right? So usually you'll find that they do not have any kind of excuses. Talk to any 740 plus scorer who really has been able to get to that score after a lot of struggle. One thing that you'll realize is that they don't entertain any excuses. It doesn't matter whether you've been out of touch with studies for 5 years or 6 years. In fact, I have army veterans with 20 plus years of work experience. They're on the verge of retirement, and now they're looking to do an MBA, and they are taking coaching, and they are not at all concerned about how long it has been since they last touched books. They have that right attitude that tell me what I have to do, I'm going to do it, and I know I'm going to crack it. There are no second guesses. So no excuses about background, about years of work experience, about skills, about college, about schools. None of that really matters. Secondly, you'll find that all of these people are extremely tenacious, right? By tenacious, I mean that they do persevere when it comes to getting to a score of a 740 plus. It's not that, they've been at it for about 3 or 4 days. If they're not able to see any improvement, they're just not going to let go of it and say, okay, it's time for me to take my exam and be done with it. They are actually going to persevere. They're going to go through the grind that it takes to be able to break past that score of a 740. It's not easy, obviously. I mean, if it were, then anyone would have been able to get it. There is obviously a certain approach that you have to follow. It's simple, it is step by step, but it's not easy by any stretch of imagination. So tenacity, I think, is something that is extremely important if in case you're embarking on this journey, because you will be tested to the hilt when it comes to tenacity. And lastly, receptive. A lot of people are actually, when they come in, they don't know the rules and they're not willing to play by the rules. So GMAT has some very specific guidelines in terms of the way you're supposed to approach questions. And one of the most hilarious things that I actually have found in my experience is when people start questioning the officially correct answers, right? When you start questioning the officially correct answers, I mean, you're actually fighting a losing battle if you think about it. GMAT is not going to change its ways just because you don't accept the answer. So it's better for you to actually be receptive, to be open to new ways of thinking about questions, to understand that there could be another way to reach the answer, and be open to tweaking your own approach and your own reasoning and your own thinking. And trust me, this is one mental block that has kept the brightest of students have met at a certain level and not allowed them to go past it, because they weren't willing to take an honest look in terms of where they're going wrong. They were just too fixated with the reason or the approach that they had used to get the answer, and it obviously got them a different answer altogether. So first, learn the rules, and second, be willing to play by the rules. That's extremely important, and that again comes from the mindset. There is no skill involved here. Being open and receptive doesn't require any skill, right? Having no excuses doesn't require any skill. Tenacity doesn't require any skill. It's mindset, which I think is the most important part of all the things I'm going to be talking about. This is the foundation on which every other thing is going to work. So one, right mindset. Second thing that I found common in all of these people is analytical ability. I've seen that these people are not just mechanically, mindlessly solving questions after questions after questions after questions. They're not the ones who are looking at, reading up 20 books on concepts, or practicing 50 different practice tests, or they're not looking to solve 3,000 questions on sentence correction and 100 passages. They are very clear about understanding where they're going wrong, what their weaknesses are, why are they making the mistakes, and then after they've understood what the mistake is, they craft a customized plan of action to root out those mistakes, to root out those weaknesses. So analytical ability, again, is something that I believe has to be learned. At least in our Indian education system, analytical ability is not at all encouraged, I would say, right? It's more about rote memorization. And if there's one thing that is going to probably stop your progress after about a 670 or a 680 on the GMAT, it is this. No amount of practice will allow you to break past that even 700, which is not even competitive these days. Getting past the 700 itself is going to become an uphill task, a Herculean task, if you will, if you're not analyzing the mistakes and creating a plan of action tailored to root out those mistakes, right? So analytical ability is crucial. Accuracy and time, a lot of people focus either only on accuracy or only on time, right? Sometimes people are just focusing on accuracy and not even paying attention to how long they're taking to solve a question. I'm not sure if you do this, but I've seen people spend 10 minutes on a single question while taking a practice test in pursuit of trying to get the right answer. And that is preposterous, right? I mean, on the exam, you don't have more than minute and a half to maximum 2 minutes per question. If you're spending 10 minutes on one question, imagine how many questions you will have to rush towards the end, right? So one, it's not about focusing only on accuracy. And then there are some people who start with timing themselves right on first day. They don't even know the concepts, they don't even know the approaches, they start timing themselves on first day. Both of these extremist approaches are not going to help you at all. So you'll find that all these people who actually go on to score a 740 plus, they have a good balance of it. They understand that the first thing that comes into the picture is conceptual foundation. Once conceptual foundation is taken care of, then you move on to the other thing, which is to learn the right way to apply those concepts. Application doesn't come naturally. Once your concepts are clear, once your application is clear, then you move on to the third thing, which is pacing or timing, right? So you have to, you can't be extremist where you're focusing only on accuracy or only on time. You need to have phases in which your preparation needs to be divided. And I'm letting you know what those phases are. First is conceptual mastery. Second is application of the concepts that you've learned, which has to be done in untimed manner. And the third thing is that you start gradually shaving off time while you're practicing questions. You're going to find yourself getting that 95% to 100% mark in roughly around 2.5 to 4.5 weeks, depending on the level at which you're starting. That's the maximum time I've seen anybody take, 4.5 weeks. Error log is critical. You have to keep tabs on the reason for the mistakes. A lot of times people do write in the error log, but they don't really review the error log frequently enough to reinforce the learnings. And then there are some people, especially from the IT industry, who go overboard with error logs. I'm not sure if you've seen this online. There's so many people who go overboard with error logs. They've got bar graphs and pie charts and all those things flying around. But the thing that they actually have to focus on, they haven't really focused on it. And I'm telling you, when it comes to error log, is only one thing that you need to focus on. And that one thing is, why did you make the mistake? What is that specific, tangible, concrete learning from the mistake that you made? If you're not writing that down in clear and easy to understand terms, then all bets are off, right? Because then if you don't even know why you're making the mistake, if the learning is not concrete or tangible, how would you be able to ever avoid it, right? So error log is crucial. You don't have to go overboard with all of those shenanigans. All you need to ensure is that you have very specific reasons written down in an Excel sheet, preferably. Um, Another thing that you have to be very clear with is review, as I said, at least once a week. Don't worry about practicing new questions. Take out one day every week where you go back to the question that you solved incorrectly and just review those. You'll make way more progress by avoiding the mistakes that you're prone to make than by practicing new questions. You'll find that to be true once you start applying that. And the third thing here is practice, pace, analyze, fix, and repeat. So a lot of times I've seen this, that people, generally are scared of taking mock tests, right? They have that, I mean, they become a nervous wreck the moment I say, okay, you have to appear for a test tomorrow or day after. They actually become a nervous wreck. They're not able to sleep well. Even when they take the test, they're not able to focus. They're sweating. Their eyes are not able, like they start watering after like half hour or 45 minutes into the test. And all of those things obviously keep you from truly understanding what the exam is testing you on. So along with conceptual mastery, you also need to focus on other aspects like patience, like stamina, focus, concentration. If you're not focusing on these things alongside preparing for the subject matter, obviously you'll hit a ceiling and not be able to go past it again, right? I'm sure everyone can understand the fact that if you're not able to last through the entire section, if you're not able to last through the entire section in terms of focus or concentration, then no matter whether you get 100% accuracy in your practice phase, you won't be able to replicate that on the exam. So alongside conceptual mastery, please do focus on pacing. Please do focus on stamina and working on concentration. There are specific exercises that you can do that can allow you to improve your concentration. And the most important, in fact, I would suggest in the last 9+ years that I've come across, the number one advice that can allow you to become a ninja when it comes to GMAT is 4 hours of non-stop RC practice. Now, those of you guys who are taking a note of this, 4 hours of non-stop RC practice for even 6 days is going to make your concentration levels like soar to new heights. You would not have expected yourself to improve so quickly if you pay attention to it. As I said, it is not easy. If it were easy, everyone would have done it. But not everyone sits through 4 hours of continuous RC practice. One section, RC, demands the most, I think, the highest levels of concentration. And if you can sustain for 4 hours on just RC, GMAT, I can tell you in terms of stamina and concentration, is going to be a breeze for you. Very, very important, guys. A lot of people don't really pay attention to this when they are preparing. Now, this is the Achilles heel in everyone's preparation. Consistency in preparation. Like, I understand, right? I mean, the world is full of distractions these days. It is almost next to impossible to commit to something for a sustained period of time. Something or the other creeps in. Either it's your work or it's family, or there are some other distractions, social life and all that. They tend to creep in and they basically they derail your preparation. You fall off the tracks, and it's very hard to get back on the track once you've fallen off of it, right? And it's like, when I think about consistency, I think the number one thing that you lose if you're inconsistent is momentum, right? The second point that you see here on the slide, this is critically important. People know momentum, but I'm telling you, on the GMAT, I don't think there is anything in terms of traits that's more important than really developing the right momentum in your preparation. Like, think of a giant flywheel. When you think of a giant flywheel, think about how much of effort would go into rotating that giant flywheel just once, right? If you have to rotate it, for the very first rotation takes the maximum effort. But if you were to keep at it, the second rotation won't take that long. The third rotation will in fact take less effort. Fourth will take even less effort. After a point in time, it becomes habit, and you're able to, without even exerting too much of effort, make a lot of progress. That is only possible with consistency. Think about rotating that flywheel once with all the effort, all the might, taking out so much of time from work and your life, rotating it once and then not studying for 3 to 4, 5 days. That flywheel is going to come to a standstill and you'll have to start all over again. That's why even after months of practice, I see that people feel they're still back at square one. They haven't really made any progress. And it's true. I mean, it's absolutely possible if, in case you are not consistent in preparation, take out a minimum of 2 hours every single day. Every single day. When I took the exam for the first time, I was working in a consulting firm. The days were erratic. I was working around 14 to 15-hour work days. I have never been a morning person myself. I used to make sure that I get up before leaving for office. Even if I had like 1 to 1.5 hour block in the morning before leaving for office, that was way more productive than coming back from the office and studying. Because after a long day at work, no matter how diligent, sincere, and willing you are, when you sit down to practice, you're just not productive, right? And whatever you might accomplish in 4 hours after office, you might be able to accomplish the same thing in about 1.5 to 2 hours in the morning. So I wasn't a morning person, and most people I meet are not morning people. But if you can actually get into the habit of getting up early just for 2 to 3 months, I'm telling you, the results are going to be remarkable. So muscle memory is not possible without consistency. So when it comes to approaches, until the approaches become a part of your blood and bones, until you internalize them to the extent where you don't have to think about them and you're able to apply them on the exam, until that happens, the results are not going to be spectacular. So muscle memory means that you look at a question, let's say it's an assumption question, or it's an RC passage, or it's an inequalities question in quant, or it's a problem solving question, any problem solving question. The approach has to be instinctive. You look at it and you will be able, you know the approach, you just get at it, you get the answer and you move on. If you have to rack your head on the exam, really forcing yourself to think of the right approach to answer the question, I'm sure you can understand it'll be curtains for you on the exam, simply because you'll end up taking way too long to answer the question. And GMAT is brutal with penalties, brutal. If you're not pacing yourself, then obviously there is no way you'll be able to finish the test on time. If you don't finish the test on time, your score's going to tank. It's going to tank like crazy. And this has happened with so many people just because they couldn't pace. And pattern recognition is again supremely important. GMAT is a pattern-based exam. GMAT is a pattern-based exam. You will not be able to connect the dots between various topics and various questions if you're not consistent. If you're studying sporadically, if your approach is scattered, and I'm sure it's anyone's guess that if you're studying on Monday and you're studying on Wednesday, and then you again study on, let's say, next Tuesday, the 4 to 5 days gap that you have is going to make it impossible for you to connect the dots with what you've done before. And if you're not able to connect the dots, then it will basically be an endless cycle where you'll kind of keep solving more and more questions, and you'll basically hit a plateau and not be able to cross that. Pattern recognition is supremely critical. If you are able to nail this one thing, pattern recognition, understand the various patterns that the exam tests you on, you'll be able to get to a high score in a very short span of time. You do not have to solve ungodly number of questions to get there. Next thing, eliminate intuition. I think after analyzing over, I don't know how many thousands of questions, it must have been more than 40, 50,000 questions easily. After analyzing all of these questions, if there's one thing that I have been able to understand about the GMAT, it's that the test makers, I think, are either incentivized or they're given a clear mandate that you need to make the wrong options intuitively appealing. I think that's a clear mandate that's given to all test makers. They have to write questions in such a way that the wrong options should be intuitively appealing. Now, for people who tend to pick the options based on how an option sounds to them, how an option looks to them, how an option feels to them, how an option tastes to them, if they're basing their answers on such subjective reasons, obviously they'll play right into the trap. They'll fall right into the trap. So you have to eliminate intuition completely. Please understand, intuition is again something that is probably the number one trap that's there on all sections. And it's not just verbal here, it's also for quant, for data sufficiency, problem solving. If you were to assume that, let's say, the information given to you in the question is about integers, and that's what you that preconceived notion is what you carry into your approach, obviously you'll end up getting a different answer altogether. So it's the number one trap, I believe, that is there in about 70% of the questions on the GMAT. Now, to eliminate intuition, you can't eliminate it just by saying, okay, I'm not going to use it. Just because Manan came one fine day on a webinar and told me not to use intuition, I'm not going to use intuition. Obviously, it's not that straightforward. The number one thing that you have to keep in mind if you want to eliminate intuition is that you need to have very strong conceptual mastery. You need to have very strong conceptual mastery, because if there are gaps in your understanding of a concept, then the only option that you'll resort to is intuition, because you don't know why the wrong ones are wrong and you don't know why the right one is right. So strong foundation is imperative if you want to eliminate intuition. That's the first thing. First thing, strong conceptual foundation. Once you've done that, then the next thing is to force yourself to apply those concepts. A lot of the times people are too quick to check the solutions. They're not willing to rack their head or apply themselves on questions. The moment it's been around a minute and a half on a question, they feel, okay, I might as well just give up on it and check the solutions and be done with it. But trust me, you cannot learn application theoretically. You can't learn the application of concepts theoretically by solutions feeding the reasons to you. If you're waiting for the solutions to feed the reasons to you and not really taking the time to apply what you've learned on your own, again, it will basically become a never-ending cycle and not be able to break past it. All 740 plus scorers, the number one thing that I train them on whenever they enroll is that you need to be completely objective in your reasons for elimination. Objective, it has to be rooted in either concepts or certain preferences that are specific to the GMAT, and not something that you feel could be right or could be wrong. That right there is a red flag. So number one trap, strong conceptual foundation and force yourself to apply. You have to solve a critical mass of questions before you become adept at the application of concepts. It's not going to happen naturally. It will take some time. Usually takes about 2.5 weeks for people to reach that inflection point where suddenly everything starts to make sense to them. But you have to persevere at least until that time. It doesn't come naturally to even a single person. And I have tutored some of the most brilliant minds I have personally come across. And I can tell you, even those people struggle when it comes to application. And that's just the initial phase. After that, it becomes easier. Next is customized plan of action. Now, for this, a lot of the times, I think we all are in the habit of, saying that I'll order what the other person is having, right? That's generally what sometimes people tend to do when they walk into a restaurant. I'll order because that looks very tempting. And, my friend got a 740 using that particular plan of action. That looks pretty good on paper. I think I should be using that. Copying strategies doesn't work on the exam because you're not the same person as your friend. right? You have different strengths and you have different weaknesses. And if in case your plan of action is not tailored to those strengths and weaknesses, then simply following someone else's plan of action, or a, there's a template given on various sources. There's templates given, there are plans of actions floating around on the internet. Those things don't really work until they take into account precisely what your strengths and weaknesses are. So number one thing, please don't follow. You have to create a customized plan of action for yourself. And that plan of action has to be target oriented. What I suggest that you do is that you must have a daily plan of action. How many questions would you solve? From where would you solve those questions? And how would you solve those questions? So one is number of questions. Second is from where would you solve those questions? And third is how would you solve those questions? You'll use to crack those questions, right? So you have to have a targeted plan of action, daily plan of action if possible. That can be a game changer for you. If you know precisely what you need to get done every single day, then you don't have to really waste your time strategizing unnecessarily. You can just focus on execution. Just execute, 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 take a mock test, analyze, fix whatever you think is missing, and then you again take a mock test and again do the same thing. So it has to be target oriented. There have to be certain milestones and benchmarks that you need to set in your preparation. Very, very important. A lot of the times people just feel that, okay, I just need to solve 200 CR questions. No, that's not a target oriented approach. You need to know what is the time per question that you need to hit. You need to know what is the accuracy you need to hit. You also need to know what specific question you need to solve. Is it assumption? Is it evaluate? Is it strengthen? Is it weaken? Is it flaw? Is it boldface? Like, what specific question are you looking to improve on? Please, the more random you are in terms of your approach, the more difficult it's going to get to make any headway. So very targeted, very pointed, very precise as to what is it that you're trying to improve on. So don't follow. You have to have target oriented study plan, preferably a daily plan of action for the next 2.5 to 3 months. If you're starting from scratch, if in case you are a retaker, then you could have a plan of action that could be just about a month or month and a half, and you should be good to go. Test taking strategies. Now again, like, people feel there's one blanket answer to this. There are people who come to me and they ask me that, okay, Manan, should I be taking the test at home or should I go to a test center and take it? Okay, Manan, tell me, my friend actually took verbal first and then took quant. Is that the order I should follow? And you understand that all of these things are very personal. For somebody who's weak in quant would not benefit by starting with quant later. Ideally, and again, it's not something that works for everyone, but for most people, this is what works, that you start with what you're weak at, because you're more attentive, you're more focused at the beginning of the session. So invariably, you're able to make some headway, right? So if you start with your weakness first, that generally for about 80 to 90% people pays off very well. But for 10%, it doesn't pay off. So they might have to experiment and take verbal first if that's their weakness. So the other thing, when you talk about whether you should take the test at home or should you take it at a test center, now that kind of depends on where you're coming from in terms of test temperament. If you historically have been, let's say, not a good test taker, let's put it mildly, if you've not been a good test taker, that you get fidgety at the thought of a test, you become nervous at the thought of a test, then you are better off taking the test at home. And in case you think that you're confident in your ability to perform in real time pressure, and you don't have to like worry about the hassles that go into arranging all the logistical stuff if you have to take the test at home, then you're better off taking it at the test center, right? You don't have to worry about all those logistical issues. You can just simply focus on the test at the test center. The environment is such that it really, really like sucks you in with respect to focus. I've seen people at home, they're not able to focus because they're in their comfort zone. But at the test center, because the environment is such, an environment is always bigger than ourselves, they're able to focus a lot better. All right. So that was a quick roundup of the last thing. Now, avoid these traps. These traps are the biggest time suckers when it comes to students preparing for the GMAT. And I understand most of you guys might be working and you might not have a lot of time in your hands. So I just want to let you know what is it that you must avoid with these points. Number one thing that you must avoid is this erroneous notion that more is better. I think we all have been subjected to this indoctrination ever since school days that, you know what, if you want to get a high score in 10th and 12th and graduation, that you should just basically solve more and more questions, you should read more and more concepts, and you should take more and more tests. But I'm telling you on the GMAT, more is not necessarily better. In fact, I'll tell you, one of the most surprising things that I have found in my entire experience, one of the most surprising things is that each and every 740 plus scorer, and there's not even a single exception in this, each and every 740 plus scorer has not felt the need to exhaust the content. Not even a single 740 plus scorer has felt the need to exhaust the content. What they are focusing on is deliberating on the question, really trying to squeeze out every ounce of value there is in questions, practicing the right resources, analyzing, fixing, and again taking tests. If you're following that particular approach in exactly that order that I just mentioned, you'll find yourself making a lot more headway than just simply, mechanically and mindlessly just solving more and more questions and reading more and more concepts and taking more and more tests. More is not better. Avoid this. This is the biggest time sucker. The second thing is that official guide only. Now, I know this might sound blasphemous to some people because, official guide is obviously taken as the Bible in the GMAT circle. But official guide, honestly, is, let me put it this way, it's inadequate when it comes to getting a 740 plus on the GMAT. And the reason is, it doesn't just challenge you enough. Official guide is filled with such easy questions that you just don't get challenged enough. And on the exam, the moment even one difficult question pops up, you are thrown off your game. So official guide is good if in case you're just starting out, but please don't bank on it if you're truly serious about getting to a 740 plus. You need to hunt for some really good 750 plus level questions online and practice those, the ones that challenge you, the ones you're able to answer without even paying like complete attention to them. Trust me, they're not really doing any kind of good to you. So official guide is good for starting, but don't bank on it. It will fall woefully inadequate. The next thing that is again a biggest time sucker is that we're drowning in free information, right? We're drowning in free information. And I know people, they're just so confused. They're just not clear whom to trust. Should I trust this trainer? Should I trust that coaching institute? Should I trust this forum? Should I trust that expert? And I understand, because if I kind of veer my, like when I kind of do something new, I am faced with the same dilemma. Whom should I trust? So first and foremost, before you actually embark on this journey, take 1 week to 10 days and do your due diligence. Take 1 week to 10 days and do your due diligence, where you actually understand who is that one person or what is that coaching company that truly understands what I'm looking for. And like I have seen them with their results and everything, and they're doing a decent job. I think I can trust them. So do your due diligence as much as you have to for 10 days and put that deadline. I'm going to do my due diligence for 10 days and I'm going to pick one person, and then I'm going to put blinders on. I'm going to put blinders on and I'm not going to focus on anybody else. I'm going to unsubscribe from all sources and I'm just going to focus on what that person has to say. See, when you start with something new, you are impressionable, right? Anybody can come swinging at you with their opinion and you might get swayed. It's really, really important for you to resist that temptation to just keep hunting for more. Go for one person, go for one company, and just stick to that. Unsubscribe from everywhere else until you have made sufficient headway, until you started getting that 730, 740, where when somebody comes at you swinging with their opinion, you can tell them that, okay, this makes sense and this doesn't make sense. Like, you need to have that kind of foundation to be able to operate with. Very, very important, critical for those of you who are working, because these are things that really, really drain a lot of your time and energy. Next, the right coach. Now, like I somehow find this to be a little surprising myself, that when I look at people like Virat Kohli, when I look at people like Michael Jordan, and I look at people, Michael Phelps, Usain Bolt, these people are, I think you understand, like they're exceptional athletes. Why would they want to hire a coach? And typically, coaches are not as accomplished as these athletes are, but still these people go on to actually hire coaches who are less accomplished than they are. Now, I believe that why they would be doing that, and what I've seen in my own experience, is that you're so into your job, right? There's so many things you're juggling at work and in your life in general, is that analyzing your mistakes objectively and pointing out what those blind spots are that are holding you back is actually sometimes not possible, because you're too much into yourself, right? It happens with everyone. You need an objective third person's perspective to help you understand exactly what is it that you could be doing incorrectly. And this is the number one part of my job. I like identifying the blind spots that are holding people back, exposing it to them, strategizing a plan of action, and trying to overcome those blind spots one at a time. Accountability is another thing. Like, you have to hold yourself accountable, or have somebody hold you accountable. You got to be able to do the work that's required, and you need to hold yourself accountable, because on GMAT particularly, you don't have that. When you're preparing on your own, accountability is so important. And hand holding also initially, because when you're starting out with something that is this intensive, it's important for you to have somebody to hand hold you at least through the initial phase, and then you can kind of take the training wheels off and be on your own. So these are really important. So these were some of the points that I think are absolutely critical for you to be able to understand how to get a high score on the exam. As you understand, I haven't really talked about those cliched things that are there on the internet. I've talked about something that is, in fact, as I said, deeper, richer, and way more important. If you truly, take out even 10% of what I've discussed with you here and apply it, let the results do the talking. Don't have preconceived notions in terms of what is going to work, what's not going to work. I'm coming at you with evidence and experience. I'm not sharing my opinion over here. I'm telling you what works and what doesn't work, and you just need to take it and run with it and let the results do the talking. Don't block yourself from using something just because it goes against your own ideas about what it takes to get a high score. As I said, being receptive is quite important. Now, when it comes to timeline for an MBA, I just want to quickly let you know, as far as taking GMAT and GRE is concerned, a lot of people have this fallacious idea that it takes like 6, 8, 9, 10, 12 months to get to a high score on the GMAT or GRE. As I said, nothing could be farther from the truth. It's important for you to have targeted approach towards the exam, have certain deadlines and certain benchmarks that you need to be able to cross to be able to make headway, and that will just take you 2 to 3 months. Now again, this is for people who are starting at an average level, right? You need to obviously do a quick sort of a self assessment or take a diagnostic test to know, are you starting at an average level, are you above average or below average, and accordingly the timeline might shift. This is primarily for people who are starting at an average level. So 2 to 3 months for GMAT GRE preparation. Researching B schools takes about a month or two. Working on applications takes 3 to 4 months. Preparation for interviews takes 1 to 2 months. So you can see that it's a game plan that takes you roughly about almost a year. So you should start early so that you have an advantage over your peers. And the last thing I'm going to close with is something that has allowed some of my students to get to a 770 and a 780 in just 40 days. This is the exact plan of action. I would really want you guys to take a screenshot of it if you want. I'll explain this to you in 1 second. But this plan of action is basically what they used for 35 to 40 days. And in about 40 days, were able to get their score. Now, this is possible to do alongside work. You can see here I've written on the right side column time in minutes, how much time you have to spend on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I've deliberately not kept it more than 90 minutes. 90 minutes is doable. Even if in case you're working a very hectic job, this is doable. If GMAT is important, you will make time. I cannot stress this enough. Even people who are not working don't find the time for GMAT. People who are working anyway don't find the time for GMAT. Nobody finds time for GMAT. You need to make time for it. You need to make time for it, schedule it in your calendar, and make those 2 to 3 hours holy, sacrosanct. Nobody should be allowed to interfere in those 2 to 3 hours of slot that you've kept for GMAT preparation. Nobody finds the time. You have to make time, and I'm sure that 90 minutes in a day is not a big ask. So what you do is you basically start with LSAT RCs. I told you they're incredibly important. So on Monday, this is what you do. Tuesday, this is what you do. Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Saturday and Sunday, when presumably you have an off, you actually go hard at it. This is where you do the marathon that we were talking about, like 4 hours of continuous practice, about 3 to 4 hours of continuous practice. These are the passages you take up. Then the next week, you start with a little bit of quant. So you do word problems. WP here stands for word problems or arithmetic. For those of you who are familiar with arithmetic, it's the same thing. So what you do on Monday is that you take up 2 passages just so that you can maintain the level that you have that you've got in the very first week, right? A lot of times people move on to new topics and they completely forget what they've done before. So important for you to balance the two out. 2 passages you must take up every single day to maintain the level. It's not enough to improve your level, but at least it'll be where you were. And then you basically start practicing more of what you're doing that week. So word problems, you take 20 word problems questions. After that, you again on Tuesday take 2 passages, 20 word problems questions. Geometry here is, so this is geometry essentially G1, G2, G3. This will take care of all geometry. So you spend 3 days on geometry, and these are the number of questions you take up on geometry. Saturday, Sunday, you do PNC. This is combinatorics. For those of you who are familiar with combinatorics, this is exactly the same PNC probability. So you've got on weekends, obviously, I want you to spend slightly longer time. On the right hand side, I've given you the exact breakup of how much time you should be spending doing 10 passages, 70 minutes. 20 PNC questions should take you 80 minutes initially. It's fine because you're just getting started on that. 20 word problems questions, 60 minutes. 20 geometry questions, 60 minutes. So the time that's given to you on the rightmost column, it is in conjunction or in accordance with the topics that you'll be covering on that day. Then on Monday, you start with sentence correction. And one thing that you'll notice as you're taking screenshots is that we are building up on what we've done before. It's like stacking on top of what we've covered before already. So we start with SC the next week, but we still continue doing 2 passages here, and we do 10 mixed bag questions of word problems, geometry, and PNC. These 3 topics were the ones that you covered last week. So you got to take up 10 mixed bag questions from each of these. Move on to next. So SC, this is a practice document that I have, but you can probably practice from other sources if you want. I call it SC latest essentially. So you take up 20 questions from SC latest, 2 passages, 10 mixed bag questions, so on and so forth. Saturday, Sunday, you do a little bit of extra practice. This goes on for about roughly 4 to 5 hours on Saturdays and Sundays. Then you again start with a new topic on Monday, which is stats, and you basically keep building up, right? So I'm sure you get the idea as to how this entire study plan is made up. Take a screenshot of this as well. I think we're about to come to the last slide as far as study plan is concerned. So this is for the next week. We start with inequalities, and then we start with critical reasoning on Monday. And the entire week until Friday, we do critical reasoning. And again, on the right-hand side, all of these times are given in accordance with the topics that you'll be covering. And this is the last slide. 35 days is what it takes for them to finish off all there is as far as GMAT is concerned. Monday, they talk to me, and we create a customized plan of action. And what I usually suggest to students is that you take 10 days off before your exam. 10 days, like, don't go to work, like just call in sick, make whatever excuse you have to make. Don't go to work for 10 days before your exam, and you give all the time that you have to GMAT, just so that there are no distractions. This works beautifully well even for people who are starting with GMAT preparation after a very long period of time. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we create a plan of action. They do that. They take a mock test. They again talk to me. After they've kind of scored a 740 plus consistently, I recommend that they should book the exam date. So once they book the exam date, I give them a buffer of around 4 to 5 days to make sure that they're able to refine and polish whatever approaches that need to be polished. And then they again work on the customized plan of action we share. Last day before the day of the exam, they speak with me once again to make sure they're clear on the last minute tips. And then they take their exam on the 46th day. So this is basically what has worked well. This is an actual plan of action I shared with a student of mine, and they were able to get to a 780 with a quant 50 and a verbal 47. Verbal 47 is crazy, right? 99th percentile and more. So I hope you've got this. This is super important. I'm sorry, I think I overshot the time a little bit, did I? So yeah, so I think let's just quickly have an open Q&A session now. Preeti, over to you.
Okay, awesome. I think, Manan, that was a whole lot of information. I mean, I found very difficult. I think I'm going to go back and I think pause the video and watch the recording. So do, for anyone on the call, who feels similar to me, overwhelmed with all the amazing information, do watch it on our YouTube channel. The recording, live recording will be available. Now, that being said, I think we do have a few questions. All right. Yeah. The first question is, I'm in college right now, so when should I start preparing for the GMAT?
So ideally, you should start as soon as possible, because you understand GMAT is valid for 5 years. So the sooner you typically start, the sooner you can start working on your profile and shortlist B schools accordingly. I have students who are in the first year of college, second year of college, and they can't thank me enough because I counsel them to start early. And so I think the answer to that is as early as you can.
Perfect. And, follow-up question to that, though it has not been asked, what we get is, oh, I gave the GMAT a couple of years back, but when I took the test, I sent my scores to X schools, because at the end of the test, you can select schools where you want to automatically send the scores. And then you're like, but what if I want to change my school? So that is perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine. You do get an opportunity to attach your test score and, when you apply as well. So that's fine. We answered that question. The other question is, during a 3-year degree course in commerce, will MCOMs, okay, this is not a GMAT question, but I'll take this. Doing a 3-year degree course in commerce, will MCOM suffice as the 16th year? This really depends, okay, Avni. So if you clear CFA level 1, will that do as a fourth year? No, CFA is a completely different course. MCOM will suffice as the fourth year, the 16th year, but depends on the schools that you're trying to apply to. Not many schools have these requirements. There are only some schools and universities which need you to have 12 plus 4, before you apply. So it really depends on your school selection. Again, I think this is about MBA admissions. Consulting, if I'm a commerce student, would that imply that without a good work experience, I have a little chance of getting into an Ivy League for an MBA? No, you can, as a commerce student, you can still go. There's nothing as a commerce student. The whole application is very holistic. And, I would recommend that you go to our website, www.theredpen.in, and just, there is a button for booking an appointment. Just do that, and, we'll be happy to speak with you. Okay, Aniket is asking, should we opt for offline preparation course or online prep course for GMAT?
So I think, Aniket, that will be a very personal question again. I would really recommend that you, take a few classes offline and online. To be honest, I have been taking offline classes for about good 8 years. And I feel that obviously the kind of hand-holding, the kind of monitoring that you do of a student's progress is actually not possible to that extent in online classes. I concede that. But having said that, don't let convenience be a reason why you're opting one and not the other, right? Just because there is, some coaching institute in your vicinity and you are more like you're more comfortable taking classes offline, that's not a strong enough reason to go for an offline classes. But if you truly feel that that person, whosoever is in the vicinity, actually can provide you the right kind of coaching and guidance, then by all means go ahead and go for it. Like, so important is, it's really important that you basically fix the right person to train with as far as GMAT is concerned, and offline and online can come later. We at InzoPrep provide both offline and online classes. So in case you want to check it out, it's there on the website, and you can see where all we have centers.
Perfect. Just a second. All right. Okay, this is again a non-GMAT question. How much does your academic does your academic grade matter as opposed to your work experience and volunteering contribution, say for an Oxford MBA? Well, it really depends. It depends on the applicant pool and what is the strength of the academic grades of that particular applicant pool. If we look at, we exclusively work with a lot of international applicants, Indian international applicants around the world. And business schools are, when they're putting a certain class together in terms of diversity, they are looking at a certain number of Indian international applicants. When the international applicant pool, everyone is not going to be Indian, even if they are, the smartest people in the room. It depends on the academic grade. We had, an applicant who was clearly waitlisted at a particular school, and eventually actually, he got accepted. But when he was waitlisted, he was told that his GMAT at that point of time was lower than the incoming class at that point of time. So it is, do not just go to a school's website and say, oh, this is the average GMAT or this is the average GRE and I will fit in. You will be compared, region wise, you'll be compared to the Indian applicant pool. And the average GMAT for an Indian applicant is very, very high. Looking at your academic grades, when schools look at the whole academic bucket to assess whether you can handle the academic workload at a top MBA program, they're going to consider your undergrad institution, undergrad subject selection, undergrad GPA, GMAT or GRE, and the breakup of the GMAT or GRE, those 5 things, okay? You can do courses like HBS Core and MBA Math to kind of negate some of that, but it has to be seen holistically. Yeah, so I think that, so that's, I think, my answer to the question. The other question I had, Manan, for you is we get asked this question very often. And I think you get probably asked this question more number of times than me. Should I take the GMAT or the GRE? What do you think?
So ideally, see, the lines have obviously blurred between GMAT and GRE considerably in the last few years. So what we have students do is that we have them take a quick diagnostic session to understand what their strengths and weaknesses are. So if you are actually very weak, like extremely weak in quant, then GRE might actually be a better option for you if you talk purely in terms of strengths and weaknesses. Verbal for both GMAT and GRE, they are at an equal footing. So honestly, that's not going to be the differentiating factor. It's more to do with quant. So if you're extremely weak with quant, GRE makes sense. But you also must also look at what kind of schools are this, what kind of scores are the schools accepting. So one, you take a diagnostic test, exactly look at which is the one that plays to your strengths, and you double down on that. And second, you do a little bit of research, reach out to Preeti, have a word with her, understand if in case the schools that you're applying to do, consider GMAT and GRE equally. And if they do, then you might as well go with the first option, depending on your strengths and weaknesses.
Perfect. Someone is asking about coaching fees. For Manan, I think his email address is right there on the screen. So do take down his email address and then just email him about his fees. And for us, you will have to go to our website and just book an appointment, and we will be happy to share that with you. All right. The other question is, if you could tell the resources from where to study and practice. So what are the resources that you recommend?
So why don't you do this? I'm not sure who asked this question, but whoever did, I think if you require a few resources, I'll be happy to share a few that I think are good. So I've curated some really good questions that I've found from various sources. I can share that with you if you could just drop in a query either on the email or you can just drop in your query on the website, and we'll get back to you on that.
Perfect. Okay, here's a question. Okay, my question is for Manan. This is anonymous. With the study plan that you shared earlier, does that start after conceptual mastery?
Yeah, it starts after conceptual mastery.
Okay. All right. Second. Okay, any opinions on live instructor-led courses and on-demand courses?
So I think it kind of depends on whether you're self-driven enough to really make progress, because usually if you look at the stats, the completion rate for on-demand courses is roughly around 6 to 8%. And for instructor-led courses, it's about 80 to 85%. So the difference of the 80 percentage points that you have over there is primarily because people require handholding and accountability, as I said earlier. If you have a very demanding job, it makes sense to have somebody to partner with to go through the initial phase of your preparation, and then you can maybe be on your own. But if you're self-driven enough, you have enough time, and you trust the resource that you're opting for, then might as well go for it. No problem.
Okay. Okay, good evening. Manan mentioned that we should go for hard questions beyond OG. Which source will you suggest for hard questions?
GMAT Club has some really good questions that are 750 plus level, so you can check that out. There are also a few other resources like Be the GMAT, you've got Manhattan Prep. All of them also have some really top-notch, good quality 700 plus level questions. So you should definitely check them out. As I told the other person who was asking regarding the content, in case you want me to share some of the practice questions that I have, I'll be happy to share them with you. If you could just drop in a note, we'll email you the content that we think is relevant for you.
Okay. All right. Now, is consultancy absolutely needed to get into good B schools? No. Consultancy is not absolutely needed, but you need to have the right information. Okay. Now, consultancy, I'm assuming for GMAT prep and for MBA admissions consulting. So I think we'll answer that, separately. For GMAT and GRE prep, like Manan said, that you don't need to have a coach, but like he said, some of these superstars have coaches.
Yeah.
And there are people who are taking that help. So it's up to you. If you are someone, who's not comfortable with that, do what you're comfortable with. Because at the end of the day, in business school, there, it's going to be you on your own. That being said, the same thing for MBA admissions consulting. Many people get into business schools even without that, but you need to be on top of things. You need to have the right information. You need to know what admissions officers are looking for. If you're applying to, let's say, a school like Kellogg, do you know that, should I give a personal example or a professional example for the leadership essay? Do we know that? When we're asking about the values question, do we know that, can we write a string of like 14, 15 values, even though those are my values? Or should I write about one or two values? And how should I kind of give examples? If you know these things, and this is just essays, guys, there's just a whole lot that goes into resumes and letters of recommendation, crafting a strong application. So if you're on top of things, there are multiple resources which are available. but you need to be on top of those things. And like Manan said, you need to have a strategy, you need to have a plan of action, and you need to be extremely disciplined on top of it, right?
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, working with coaches and consultants, they definitely give you a lot of resources, which are already curated, which are researched, so you have the right information pretty quickly. So all you can do is just execute.
Correct.
Now, this question for you, Manan. In my first attempt, I got verbal 48 and quant 48 and verbal 25. Clearly, my verbal needs a lot of work. My target score is definitely 740 plus. So I just want to know, how should I approach my study preparation? When should I plan my retest, and whether I would be able to make it in time for the first round of applications with my target score?
So again, I think it's a very personal question. I'll need to know a lot more about you than I do right now. Just quant score and verbal scores would not be sufficient. I would be happy to get on a call with you. If you could just schedule a call with me. I do good 15 to 30-minute consultations completely free of cost. So you can reach out to me on the website enzoprep.com and schedule a call with me, and we can do that tomorrow. I can guide you with exactly how you need to prepare.
I assume now this question means mix of the score. I don't know. I work at a leadership consulting firm. What would be an ideal mix to get into an Ivy League college for an MBA? What do you mean by an ideal mix? I think, is it, do you get that question for GMAT or GRA?
No, not at all.
Okay, then we don't know what this means. Now the question is, with this virtual tests which are coming in, what do you think, should people take the test at home or a test center? Is there a difference in the scores that you observe?
Not at all. There's no difference at all. It's a standardized test, so it doesn't really make any difference as far as scoring is concerned. The scoring algorithm doesn't differentiate whether you're taking the test at home or you're taking it at a test center. As I said earlier in the discussion that I had with you, it primarily depends on, are you a good test taker or not? By a good test taker, I mean, do you get flustered easily or you don't get flustered easily? If there's a curveball question thrown at you, will you be able to take it in your stride and like make a strategic decision to maybe either guess on it if required and move on to the next one without it affecting your nerves? If so, then I think test center would definitely be a better option for you, because at home you have to deal with a lot of logistical issues. I've had people, sometimes the power went off, sometimes the laptop conked off, sometimes Wi-Fi shut off. Like there are these kinds of things that happen at home which you have to be responsible for. And these kinds of things you can avoid if in case you're a good test taker and just take the test at the test center. On the other hand, if in case you're not, then might as well take it at home where you're in your comfort zone and where you can actually focus and concentrate. So the big point here is, where do you think you'll be able to focus better? Some people focus better in a library or in an environment where that's the kind of vibe that's going on in there. And then there are some people who kind of are able to focus better at their study table where I'm sitting. So whatever works for you, that's what you can go for. But there is absolutely no difference. There's no a difference in the scoring whether it's at test center or at home.
Okay, perfect. Now there are three last questions, and I'm going to take them very, very quickly. In your opinion, is it mandate to have at least 3 years of work experience before getting into a good business schools? A business school? Yes, we recommend at least 3 years of work experience. Um, 1 second. We recommend at least 3 years of experience, work experience at the time of application. Okay, do not say that by the time I go to business school I will have that. So yes, 3 years, yes. How to look for scholarships, when to start applying for scholarships, do reach out to us. I'm just going to type out this answer. Do reach out to us for for details of this, and we can help you on that. The other questions, just a second, let me just share this. For the other question, okay, this question is the last question which I'm going to take. For someone who is into a tech role, how do we overcome international exposure barrier in case we want to target top business schools like HBS, LBS, GSB, etc.? So last week I attended an AGAC conference. AGAC is Association of International Graduate Admissions Consultants. It's a very niche group of admissions consultants globally, working on mostly on MBA, and a small portion working on master's programs. And every year there's a conference where we get the opportunity to speak with and network with admissions officers from top business schools. Okay, so there were admissions officers across all schools, and I actually moderated a panel which was called Careers of the Future. Okay, on the panel, actually, we spoke, when we're speaking about careers of the future, invariably tech is undisputable. It is disrupting every single industry, right? so there, and there are a lot of Indians who are applying with a tech background. So people, business school admissions officers are looking very closely at people who are bringing that tech experience, because your recruitability post MBA is very, very high. Now that being said, it's also important to differentiate you in your applications, because they cannot have 40% of the class sitting there with tech roles. Um, to overcome so international exposure is not the only differentiating factor. But if you do not have international exposure, there could be other ways in which you can sort of showcase how you're different. It's a long process. You have to storyboard, you have to do a lot of self-reflection, and we do help with all of that end to end. I would strongly recommend that you book an appointment with one of our experts, and we'll be happy to speak with you and provide you details. I'm going to just type out over here that you can the link to where you can book an appointment. Okay, there's this. Okay, which mocks will you suggest as being closest to the quality of the GMAT, Manan?
So I think you can go for GMAT prep tests. They are the most reliable and the most accurate tests out there. They have the exact same scoring algorithm that the actual GMAT has. But having said that, I think it always makes sense to have another source to go to. So I usually suggest that you should go for the GMAT prep test that you can get from MBA.com, including the paid ones. There are a total of 6 tests there, and you should go for Manhattan prep tests as well. They're on the difficult side. They're slightly tougher than the real GMAT, but really good practice is what you get out of them. If you can manage like a 740, 750 on the Manhattan tests, usually you'll end up crossing that barrier on the exam if everything goes well. So these 2 test series I definitely recommend. Apart from that, if in case you're weak on verbal or weak in quant, then you might have to do some sectional tests which are available on GMAT Club. But that's basically case to case. These 2 are unequivocally the best test resources out there.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Manan. I think we covered all the questions, and there were some questions I had I wanted to ask you, but there's no time, and I will catch up with you separately on that. But
Sure.
Thank you so much for your time, and guys, do reach out to Manan. His email address is on the screen, for your GMAT or GRE preparation, and any follow-up questions that you may have. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.